Okay, so we'll give people a little bit more time to get into the meeting, and we'll start shortly.
Okay, Pauline, we have 3 people for public comment, 10-minute limit. They each get 3 minutes.
All right, let me do the first 5 slides, and then we can jump into public comment. Okay. So we're starting the May 7th Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee meeting. This is the second, is it restricted, Vicky? All right. Let me just change your access for you guys. Okay, so everybody should be able to view it. Sorry about that. So we're bringing you the Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee. This is a back-to-back meeting. So we've tried to get as much information as we could, but we're still actively working on some items. And on the next slide, we're presenting this on behalf of the superintendent and the board of directors. They're pictured here, and we usually have one board member attending these meetings. And we appreciate their attendance. I'm not sure who's here because I can't see the entire screen. Let's get on to the next slide, Viv. So in addition to the board members, this is the list of staff or pictures of staff who actually regularly attend these meetings. Not every meeting. I think I saw Jessica, because she's in my screen right here. But everybody, it's a joint effort, and we all work together to provide the information that's requested as we work through this process to get us to our budget balance, work on our budget balancing solutions. Next slide. And as our superintendent reminds us when she's going through her presentation, SBAC provides a lot of information and a lot of feedback, but it is an advisory committee, and you advise the superintendent on budget procedures or specific study items. And then she in turn will take this to the board, and the board will have the final decision in terms of what will be implemented as a budget balancing solution. Next slide. So again, we always do all our presentations grounded in our mission and taking into account our 4 E's: excellence, equity, engagement, and enrichment. And as we're looking at budget balancing solutions, equity is one of the features that we one of the E's that we focus on a lot in terms of allocating resources. Next slide. So this is our agenda for today. We're gonna do public comments in a minute. We're gonna make sure that only our voting members or their alternates will be voting and also making comments. We are going to be looking at moving towards a target and the results of our straw poll. And then we're going to be aligning around key data points, including some of the items that SBAC had requested that we follow upon, including furloughs. I think we may have an update on counselors. I'm not quite sure. College readiness, focal populations, office staffing, Elevo contractors. We're also going to look at, we're going to finish up with closing moves and next steps. But before we get into public comment, I just want to remind people that the focus in SBAC is the unrestricted general fund. And even though members have asked us to provide information on items that don't directly impact the unrestricted general fund, as we're nearing the end of this process, we need to make sure that we've covered and focused on the unrestricted general fund. So with that, Vivian, can we open public comments not to exceed 15 minutes? How many people do we have?
We have 3 people. I'd like to call one more time before we start. Is there anyone else here who would like to make public comment? Please unmute, and verbally let me know you're here to make public comment. Okay, so since there's only three, Pauline, and this says 15 minutes, they each have a maximum of 5 minutes, okay?
Okay, that
So
makes
let's
sense.
begin. Miss Betty, you're up.
Wait a minute. All right, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I sent some of this information to you, but just to kind of give a history, yes, we were started in 1976 by BHS Youth looking for educational equity. So Berkeley High students actually started this program years ago. We've had a lot of great accomplishments, and we've become a model program for other programs. Gratefully, BUSD funded us for the first time beginning in June of 2023. So we're in our second year cycle of receiving funds from the school district, even though we've been here at the high school since 1976. RISE mainly is funded by the city of Berkeley and other grants. My case manager, Wardell, who you also met, is our CFO. He and I have worked together since 1998 in this program. Our other case manager is a graduate of our program. On some of the stats that I sent to you, those are our fall stats. So you can see we don't take the cream of the crop. As a matter of fact, we probably have the bottom end of the spectrum. We do have a few kids that are on the spectrum, but they are getting great grades. But we had 80%, even with all of that, we have 80% of those students are on track to meet the A through G requirements. 86% of those are on track to graduate or prepared or well prepared. 70% improved proficiency in math, and 79% are at target level in math. And that's a really difficult one. After COVID especially, and being a former math teacher here in the district, we watched math scores plummet. So we're really trying to bring that back. And so that, even though to me that's not a nice number, that's an impressive number for our times. We did about 3,951 academic sessions so far this year. We've had more than 1,482 guardian phone contacts. And I'm sorry, that shouldn't say phone contacts, it should say contacts, because we contact them through text, through email, through phones, but also facilitate some of the IP meetings and the different things that parents need. So we meet with parents in a lot of different settings. Of our population, 61 of our students have IEPs and 504s. And I mean, I'm sorry, we attended 61 IEP and 504 meetings. We have students right now, 42 of our students have IEPs and 7 have 504s. So a large portion of our population, definitely has some educational needs. We have, I didn't put this in here. We also serve a large number and have been successful with autistic children. Just kind of to let you know, the strength of what we're working for is we're supporting families. We have 2 families whose mothers have cancer. We have 4 chronically homeless or transitionally homeless McKento-Venley families. Of course, we're still working with a sibling whose brother was murdered earlier this year. We also have another sibling who's was committed suicide last semester. We have blind parents dealing with mental illness. We have 2 kids that were currently living with their grandparents because their mother couldn't be found and their grandmother passed away, who was their care provider. We have parents that are incarcerated. We have grandparents that just have heart surgery that were care providers for our children here. We have one that we had a restraining order for the father, parents that are involved in drugs, and students living with older sisters, not an aged guardian, I guess you could say. Parents that are in treatment facilities, mothers that have passed away, and of course, grandparents moving in after medical issues. So this is just a brief synopsis of what the case managers have to process and support. So we do a lot of work with getting food into the homes, getting utilities on, finding jobs, like doing a lot of things like that. Sometimes we just sit with the parents and listen to see what they have to say and just give them a minute to download. Our income levels too, if you look, the majority of our families are below low income, very low, extra low, or poverty. We have one child actually that is above, And that child was a sibling. We had two African-American siblings that were adopted into two white fathers' home. And we felt that those two children still needed the cultural support and a lot of support for everything that they're going through. So even though they were adopted into a home that was above 80%, we took them anyway. We have a number of,
Miss Betty, I'm
Yes.
sorry, that's 5 minutes.
oh, that's 5 minutes? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Now, I wanted to let the committee know that the documents and the presentation she's reading from is in the shared drive under today's date, under
And-
today's meeting, okay?
Free to ask me any questions. Do you want me to
Thank
pass
you.
it to Stefan?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hello, my name's
Oh, hold on. Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. For some reason, it disappeared here. Let me get him set up. Okay, there.
Hello, my name's Stefan. I'm currently in 11th grade here at Berkeley High. I came into Rise freshman year. A way I knew about Rise was from middle school. It was introduced to me by like a counselor on campus, and they told me like it was a good program, and it also mentioned that you could earn college credits during the summer before you even got into high school. So my dad signed me up the following year, coming into ninth grade, and without me being in Rise, I think I wouldn't be in this position. I wouldn't have the grades that I have now. And I just think all around, like if you're a ninth grader and you're coming in and you feel like kind of lost and you don't know what to like really do or like where to go or turn to somebody to talk to, I think coming down here in the G building here at Berkeley High and checking in with like Miss Betty or Dale is really resourceful because they really help you and show you the way. Like this is the pathway you want to go if you want to be successful outside of high school and going on to college. Um, I'm raised by a single parent, which is my dad. He's the only one in my life right now. And like, yeah, there's home issues that go on. You know, there could be back and forth arguments. And like coming here and talking to Wardell, because that's mainly my guy I really talk to, and I got a good connection with him. He helps me, like, you know, it's okay to show your emotions and you don't have to be so defensive about your emotions. You can let it out and you could talk to somebody. They can get you like a therapist on campus, or you can just keep time to yourself in a quiet space and really just, you know, really clear your head and your thoughts. And Rise really did change my perspective on school because before coming into Rise, I wasn't really the type of guy that was like on top of the work, like turning in the assignments when they were due, you know, checking in with teachers. And they really made sure like you got to get these assignments in, like, especially because I play a sport, which is football. Like you definitely got to get these assignments in. Like Wardell, he like math was the biggest subject for me that I really needed to get work in. Wardell would make sure to like contact the coach and be like, he's going to stay a little bit later. He just has to finish all his math work and turn it in. And honestly, that really did help. Even though at first I was like, man, I'm not accepting this, man. I got it. I could do it on my own. But honestly, it's nothing wrong with having these people around you, especially good people like these around you to like make sure you're on top of your stuff. And I think you should really utilize that. Like when you're young, coming in ninth grade, like you're a little bit hard headed. So you're like, "Yeah, I ain't listening to that." But honestly, you should. It's really good to make sure that, you know, the people above you, you got to realize like they've been in the same situation you've been in. So they not telling it to you just to be on you. They telling you for a reason because they want to see you succeed and walk the stage and graduate. And I think that's why you should join Rise.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and sharing, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you all.
Thanks, Miss Betty. Vicky, can I send it to you later? Because I'm recording. I don't want to change screens, okay? But if you go to your Google Drive, you should have access, okay? Thank you. The next person is Paula Phillips.
Good afternoon, committee members and attendees. My name is Paula Phillips. I'm the classified professional development coordinator for the district. My position was created and established because of the BEAR measure. The voters of Berkeley voted and approved creating a position that would support classified training throughout the district. My position is the only position that provides indirect services to indirect services to students via classified professional development. My position is the only position that's built into the BEAR plan that was voted and approved on by the voters. In a meeting with the superintendent of human resources, she told me that my position was being eliminated due to a lack of work, when that's contrary to what's true. There's a lot of work for my position to be done on a year-round basis. Tonight's board resolution calls for eliminating my position completely, even though it's funded by the BEAR measure, which is confusing to me at how my position could be up for elimination completely, being that it's funded from the BEAR measure. Also, as part of the funding, excuse me for 1 sec, had to do a baby handoff. In addition to the training for classified staff, it's always been challenging to provide classified staff training because classified staff are under the impression that they have to stay at work to serve the students and the staff, whether it be at the school site or whether it be in the office for the payroll department or human resources department or the business office. Classified staff have an unresound commitment to providing customer service to all district staff and students, to the point to where whenever we do have training, classified staff, I've implemented a web training in some instances that allows them to stay on site to support the students and the staff. And during the PD days, it's challenging for them to attend PD days because they don't always have daycare for their students. Or in other cases, staff are told that on those PD days, the custodians especially, that they need to be on hand at the school sites in order to service the rest of the district. The technology department, it's been challenging for them to attend PD because of the commitment to servicing the rest of the district. It's not for a lack of work, but it's for a lack of systems within the district that provide equity when it comes to training for classified staff. And in relation to the numerous amounts of contractors that the district is using in place of instructional assistants for special ed services, the County Office of Education has created a training plan that I'd like to mirror within Berkeley to provide training to substitute staff and other employee or other applicants who might be interested in working for Berkeley to support our students. Oftentimes it's challenging for everyone to attend training sessions. But the fact is that by eliminating my position, even though one of our E's is equity, it's inequitable to cut training, to cut my position for classified PD when we have a whole department to support the certificated staff. I'm just one person providing professional development to our classified staff. I would need more support from the school district to make this program more robust, because there is work to be done, and I'm willing to do the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Okay, so that concludes with public comments. Pauline?
But
Oh, thank you, Nicole, for sending that.
I was here for public comment.
We've exhausted the time for public comment, Daniel. You have to log in before the meeting starts.
I was directed to an empty meeting room.
I'm not sure where you got the link from, but if we have time, if you're going to stay with us when we have time afterwards, then if we still have some time, you can make public comment, okay? But we have to get started with the meeting because we're on a time constraint because of the board meeting tonight. All righty? Apologize. Pauline?
Okay. Thanks, Vivian. We can go to the next slide, and I believe Anika is with us. And Anika?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Vivian. I'm going to ask for you to refresh your screen just because there's been a few slides that have been updated. I know the members have access to it, but want to make sure it's able to be displayed on the screen. So thank you again for all the folks who came out to make public comments, and thank you to our committee members who are consistently committed to making sure that we're able to get this work done and show up and even for additional meetings as tonight's meeting is. So I know Pauline's already shared with you all the priorities for tonight's or this afternoon's agenda. Again, remember, we are not going to be asking the committee to advance any proposals to be considered for the balanced budget that I'm going to create and present to the board in June. We really want to use this next hour or so to make sure we're able to answer the majority, if not all, of the questions that have been posed to us in previous phases that were presented. Before doing so, I'm going to ask that folks who are here for public comments and other members of the audience who may not be familiar with this group or the work that we do, we're on slide 8, Ms. Vivian, that you also know that in addition to attending these meetings, there are other opportunities and ways for you to stay informed and engaged on our budget process and the state of Berkeley's budget to date. The first of which is our business services webpage, which not only has the links to our budgets, but provides you detailed line by line descriptions of our expenditures as well as our revenues dating as far back, actually further back than 1819. Next slide, please. In addition to that, we have heard you all wanting a much more user-friendly and quick to access way to get information. And so we did create the BUSD budget business webpage on our website. We also have for our staff bulletins that go out pretty regularly, and in those bulletins provide updates where appropriate, and updates are available. Also, I've been creating a video series for our staff that are first released to staff and then get released to the general public. Those can be found on that BUSD budget webpage. And then also want to call your attention to the webpage for this particular committee, the Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee, that not only has the decks and the agendas for these SBAC meetings, but also has the recordings. Tonight's board meeting is another opportunity for you to stay informed and engaged, as at tonight's meeting, I and members of my team, many of whom you've either heard this afternoon or will be hearing from, are going to provide the board, an update on where we are with our budget and actually share some of the highlights of the work that this committee has been doing over the past several months. So I wanted to make sure that if you can't stay on, you know that this is not your last chance. There's other ways for you to be engaged and informed. Next slide, please. We have been talking about stormy weather ahead, and we are definitely in the midst of that weather, but have said more than once that it's not stormy weather itself that is problematic. It's when you are not prepared for that weather. And so this committee's role and one of their major charges is to help us get prepared by bringing their ideas, perspectives, and experiences to the table to help us make as best decisions as possible when we're making critical decisions about resource allocation. This committee being aware that there are really no solutions. There's not an easy path when you're having to balance a budget, particularly when you're having to balance a budget to the amount of the millions of dollars that we are, and after having done so to the same tune, about $7 million last year. And so as we engage in conversations, we do so respectfully and humbly, knowing there are many great things that are going on in our district, and of course, amazing people in our district, but also knowing that we're having to have some conversations about what are trade-offs as we move to present a balanced budget. To inform us in that work, next slide, Ms. Vivian, we have our core values of resource allocation, as well as the strategies that we try to employ to get us to that balanced budget. Next slide, please. And so we present proposals to the Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee in chunks or phases, if you will. The last phase that was presented at last week's meeting, the phase that the SBAC committee kind of weighed in on, for lack of a better way to say it, was phase 4. When you look at all of our phases in totality, all 4 phases, we have a budget target of $7.6 million. And with the help of this committee, we've been able to make some substantial progress towards that target. After phase 4 being complete, we were about $1.1 million shy of that $7.6 million budget target. I will make sure to put an asterisk here to say that this is the total of all of the components of the proposals that are brought forth to SBAC. This does not mean that this total represents all of the proposals that SBAC has said, yes, we agree that you should advance this and consider it as you build the final budget. In tonight's meeting, we're going to be providing you an update to our phase 1 in particular, as there has been some changes around our progress towards our $7.6 million target. Next slide, please, Ms. Vivian. But really quickly want to remind you all that, again, you took some time to think about the proposals that were in phase 4 and give us your recommendation of if we should advance it to be considered towards the $7.6 million budget target. It doesn't mean it will be. It just means that you, as the SBAC, after engaging in conversations, looking at data, and being a part of this committee, believes that if we have to move to 7.6, that particular proposal or that particular line item should be considered. And so we engaged you all in a straw poll. This slide shows you the different representations of the group that weighed in on that straw poll. I'm not going to go through every single vote, but what I'm asking Ms. Vivian to do is go to slide 16. On slide 16, just in the interest of time and per the request of the committee, it gives you a snapshot, if you will. There were 10 line items or items in phase 4 that SBAC was asked to consider and weigh in on. Of those 10, 6 of those proposals or those items were approved by SBAC, which means that, again, they recommended that we advance them for consideration as we start to work on creating a balanced budget to present to the board. And then 4 of those items were actually undecided by SBAC. If I look at and show you the items that were undecided, I will take some time just to explain and respond to some of that. But again, we'll not be asking SBAC to vote again on this particular set at this meeting. Next slide, please. And so one of those items that was noted as one that SBAC needed more information on and was not comfortable or ready to vote on was a proposal from staff that we reduce the investment for our STEM programs to at the tune of $35,000. The original investment was $180,000. We'll be reducing it by $35,000. And there were a lot of you all who needed more information. I'm happy to provide more beyond what I'm going to share now, but the information to share is that this particular program is put on in collaboration and partnership with Berkeley Public Schools funds. And like all of our partners, we're going to talk about later this afternoon, and like all of us, we're having to think of what the trade-offs are and thinking about how we can continue to move towards the mission, goal, and vision of the particular partnership or program with tighter or more constrained resources. And so in that conversation with Berkeley Public Schools funds, they were able to say that, yes, they can reduce this particular budget by $35,000 without having to serve fewer students. So they would serve the same number of students that they've served before, and without reducing the quality of the program itself and the product. So I'm going to say that we said it before, but I wanted to say that again, because again, looking at these numbers, the folks still had some questions about it. And if there are specific questions that folks have about this particular thing, I am going to ask that you put it in the chat. I want to pause before going further to just make sure that everyone is aware of our norms and expectations in this meeting, which is that only voting members of SBAC use our chat, and that during the time that SBAC members are using the chat, you only use them for the item that is being discussed or at hand, just to avoid confusion as we move through this process. So if there are specific questions regarding this particular item from phase 4, please put it in the chat. Again, there's a lot of content that folks really wanted to get to, and so I'm not going to spend too much time. It is one partnership, and so thank you for that, Vicki. We can come back with the specifics of what that partnership is, but it was for the STEM programs. And so again, Berkeley Public Schools Fund said we can do this. We can still do it well. We can serve the same number of students with $35,000 less, which is why we advanced this particular proposal to you all. Next slide, please. The other one that folks had some questions about, there was a proposal in phase 4 to reduce secondary counselors by 2. The questions that came up were, who were these counselors? Not who, like their names, but what type of role, counseling role were they playing? Because there are a number of different types of counselors here in BUSD. And so circling back on this one, and you will see later on in the slides to come that this proposal is actually going to be removed, as we were able to work in collaboration and figure out a way to not have to put up those 2 secondary counselors. We'll talk about it again further, but I wanted to give that update to the group because, again, it was a part of phase 4 that we asked you to weigh in on. Next slide, please, Ms. Vivian. The other one that this group had questions about, you see here is about kind of 50-50, was the proposal to restructure the admin team, if you will, at Berkeley High School with a value, for lack of a better way to say it, of about $150,000. And folks just wanted more questions, more information about that. What I can tell you is that between that meeting and this meeting, we've been in close collaboration and communication with Berkeley High School. What we do is, as you all know, we're trying to move towards a target. And there are a number of ways to move towards a target. And so when we were making recommendations to get us closer to our target by 150,000, we proposed a restructuring of the admin team at Berkeley High School. Berkeley High School came back and said, we actually have some other ideas of how we can move towards the target to the tune of $150,000 that may not require us to reduce our admin team by 1. And so I'm going to put a pin in this one only to say that I think some of the confusion or curiosity or upset was about, whoa, we're going to restructure the admin team. What does that mean? What's it going to look like? And we still might have to come to you with that information. But also, please know that our goal is to move towards the target. And if there's a different way to do it that team and that high school recommends, we are open to that as well. So we'll be coming back to you with an update on that particular area of phase 4 proposals. The last one I wanted to respond to, again, just because tonight's purpose is really around clarification, is that we had also put in phase 4 a proposal to eliminate the program supervisor for special education. I don't believe that Sean is here, Sean Massinger, who is our Executive Director of Special Education, but we will have him come back. This was, again, a decision and a recommendation made by Sean in collaboration with other members of his team, and he and they are pretty confident they can continue to do the good work that the SPED team has been doing, still moving towards the goals that the SPED team has without that position. Again, y'all, this is about trade-off. So it's not, wouldn't it be better? Can we do more if we had a supervisor? Probably. But again, we're in some really tight times and have to figure out ways that we can still move towards our shared goals with different and sometimes tighter resources. So wanted to just call those out because those were all points of clarification. The 6 that follow are all ones that you all approved. I'll let you look at that at your own leisure. And I'm going to ask Ms. Vivian to please advance to slide 27. I'm going to pass it to Pauline, who is going to give you an update around the 4 phases, as well as give you an update in particular around phase 1 and our progress towards the target. Pauline?
Hold on. Hey, thanks, Anika. So when we last spoke to you, we presented this this graphic that looked at staff proposals for phases 1 through 4, and we looked at our the steps that we're going to take, and we looked at our core value, and then we also looked at the dollar value for each of the proposals that we were considering. So with this approach, as Anika shared, the target that was remaining was $1.1 million. Next slide. So now we have an updated roadmap. As Anika mentioned, we revisited phase 1, and at tonight's board meeting, Sam will be taking some of the positions that were rescinded that were included in our phase 1 as a budget balancing solution. And I'll be going through those in more detail later on. So in terms of where we are now with our roadmap, there's an extra line added for phase 1, and this is as a result of positions that were rescinded. We rescinded 2 positions that were funded by the general fund. It was the storekeeper and the budget analyst 1, and those 2 scored $202,350. So that's being reduced from the phase 1. So instead of our phase 1 being at $1,080,000, which was what we had shared before, it's now looking closer to $878,000.
can I add before you go any further, just for the group to stay kind of aligned on the thinking around this? Those two positions were actually two positions that you all also said you were uncertain about or wanted more information about before advancing to the balanced budget. And so we're not bringing them back to you with more information or clarification because, as Paulina shared, we removed them. So I want to make sure, again, you know that we're trying to be as responsive as possible. Those were the two positions that I think it was in conversation with BCCE, Ms. Mildred asked us to hold on this. You all were gracious enough to oblige in that. And since that hold, there's been a lot of conversations that then got those two positions removed. Pauline?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Anika. So the phases 2, 3, and 4 were presented and shared with you guys. So after the modification to phase 1, we're looking at $1.3 million needed for additional budget balancing solutions. Next slide. So this is just reminding everybody what the totals we were looking at that we've shared earlier. This slide is essentially unchanged, but on the next slide you can see the section that we actually reduced was a consolidate and reduce positions. That amount was reduced by $200,000 in phase 1, and that took the total for that approach to $527,000. So the total agrees to what we had on the first page, and we also are showing that we do need an additional $1.3 million to reach the target. Next slide. This is a graphic representation. It's the second to last section, the 0.5 million. That amount was 0.7 million when we shared it with you earlier. Next slide. So let's look at what actually changed in phase 1. This is with the updates. And for those of you who can see it, you can actually make your screens larger in Google Meets. So if you're looking at this slide, you can see the areas that we actually that were rescinded. Is highlighted in red, those two positions. And the dollar impact is scored in by its own line item. So these totals, it impacted the general fund, and you can see that the revised total I shared with you earlier. But this shows the entire phase 1 that we had brought to you earlier. So next slide. And this slide, actually, the 3 positions that we had pulled, there was a lot of discussion about positions, but we actually had pulled the HR tech, we had pulled the storekeeper, and we had pulled the classified professional development coordinator. So the professional development coordinator is not scored against the general fund. It's a bearer funded position. And the item that's been rescinded from these 3 was the storekeeper. So the analyst was not on the 3 that we had pulled. So we will be bringing back those 2 other positions to you for additional clarity for the HR tech and for the PD coordinator. Any questions on this? Seeing none.
Hey, Pauline, I have a question.
Yeah.
There's confusion on the professional development coordinator. In some things I see, it says it's a full-on elimination of the position, and then some things it says it's a reduction from a 1.0 to a 0.5.
Yeah. Sam, are you
I can answer that. Yeah. So, Steve, if we do a reduction, I have to have a signed agreement with the union before I can process a reduction. But it's a quirky thing in Ed Code. So if we're doing an elimination, I don't have to have signed agreement by the union. We just negotiate impact. If it's a reduction with the new law, the new Ed Code, I have to have a signed agreement with the union that we agree on the reduction. Since we haven't reached that point yet, I had to put it on tonight as a 1.0, but the plan is still to reduce it to a 0.5, and that we're still negotiating that impact.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right.
on this slide?
See.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Vivian. Next slide, please. So that was just the update to changes to phase one. Again, for your information, we'll come back with that at our next SBAC meeting. The remainder of the time, we are really trying to follow up on some of the questions and points of confusion and requests for clarification that you've had across the 4 phases. The first one that we're going to talk about is furlough days. We have presented the idea of furloughing staff. Initially, that was just all staff. The response from some members of SBAC, just aligned to our core value of equity, was people make different amounts of money, and a furlough will impact people differently, though it will impact everyone who's furloughed, but to different degrees, perhaps. And so we were asked to reconsider and to consider furloughing folks within a certain salary bracket. And so Pauline is here to share with you the different iterations of that response tonight, with a little bit more detail about the ways in which doing so will advance us towards our target or might actually take us in the other direction. Pauline?
Okay, thanks, Anika. Next slide, please. So this is the various scenarios that we looked at when we were considering furloughs. And again, we were looking at furloughs for salaries over $125,000 and reporting the impact, which would include benefits. So to get our population, we looked at people who earned over $125,000 and who worked, who was on the 12-month calendar. So the first little box to the left here, you can see that we're looking at the impact of 1 day, 5 days, and 10 days, and on the different funding sources. Again, wanting to remind everybody that our focus is on the unrestricted general fund. Our target is scored on the unrestricted general fund, but in this slide, we're actually looking at the impact on other funds, the restricted general funds, BSEP, and other funds that are not listed here. So focusing your attention on the green highlighted row, we had said anywhere from 5 to 10 days in our proposal, and we were scoring $350 for the unrestricted general fund. That would mean we would be reducing, we'd have 8.28 furlough days for it to work mathematically to the 350,000. So we said, well, that includes our union members. It didn't include BSEP, but it included Local 21 and UBA. So then we looked at what would this look like if we removed all Local 21 and all UBA. And you can see the result in the box to the right. The unrestricted general fund, 10 days would get us $129,000, which is a far cry from the 350 that we had looked at. Then we said, well, what if we added Local 21 and not UBA? That inched us up a little bit further to $165,000. Next slide. So we said, well, let's look at UBA because UBA is obviously influencing the totals that we had. So when we looked at UBA, 1 day was 25,000, 5 days was 128. And then we thought, okay, let's look at 5 days for UBA and 10 days for the other confidential and other managers. And that gave us a total of 301,000 in the unrestricted general fund. This slide is only focusing on the unrestricted general fund. So still a little bit away from the 350, but with UBA getting 5 days and everybody else 10 days, we're closer to that 350 target. However, when I spoke to Sam, I got some additional clarification. While a lot of UBA members are on a 12-month calendar, which is how fiscal pulled the data, they're actually not 12-month employees. They're working less than 12 months, and only 2 positions actually work for 12 months, for the full 12 months. So looking at those 2 positions, we're way down to 1,600 for 1 day. 10 days will give us 15,000. So with that 15,000 and the 172 from all other unrestricted restricted and local 21, we're looking at 188, which seems to be the number that we should have, after looking at the detail, it looks like this approach will yield $188,000, which means there's a shortfall of 161,000 from what we had proposed originally. We have not made changes to this particular areas yet, but we're bringing it back for clarity in terms of looking at our data. Any questions before I move on? Okay, next slide.
So the other area of request area for information was around the counselors. At that time, remember, there were 2 secondary counselors that were on the list. I've since updated you to let you know that we've removed those counselors. However, it is still helpful for you all to hear and understand, and for us to respond to some of the questions you all had regarding counseling and the counseling department and different roles that they play. And so Jill Hogendijk is going to provide that information to you now.
All right, and I'm just going to provide an overview of where the majority of our counseling services are, recognizing that while we were able to rescind the counseling notices, that's mostly because we will be having about 3 to 4 open positions. So we're hoping to work with our site leaders to be able to fill those positions and recognize that that might be reducing counseling services in other places. What you see here is an org chart just with appreciations for our principal Doreen Bracamontes, who is on the call today, for organizing this information. Our school counselors at Berkeley High really come in 3 different categories. We have our school counselors, otherwise sometimes called our academic counselors, that are primarily provide services to students that are academic, post-secondary, and some emotional, social emotional support. Those counselors are assigned based on the hives or the small schools that you see there on the left. The right-hand side are our college and career counselors that are in this category of supplemental college and career planning and access. We have the CCC Center that supports 2 counselors plus an intern from the university, from Cal. We have Bridge with a 0.6 counselor. You heard Miss Betty talk in public comment today about the case management support that RISE provides. So while there isn't officially a counselor assigned to RISE, there is some case management support. There's some counseling support in CTE. I'm realizing the FTE wasn't updated there. And then we have a Puente counselor who splits her time between Longfellow and Berkeley High. We also have a wellness center that has a number of other supports, including a wellness center counselor. Included there also are counselors that provide targeted support for our students with IEPs. They're embedded as part of that work. We have a Title IX counselor who works both at Berkeley High and centrally with some of the district level support that is needed. And then we have some behavioral and mental health support that you see there in that middle column. Rebecca, I don't know if you have a question specifically here or if you want me to go through the 3 levels and then, okay, thank you. Vivian, you can go to the next slide. Just wanted to do the breakdown on the next slide. For our middle school counselors, you see the student enrollment across the top and the breakdown of the counseling supports that are provided and the funding sources. So depending on the school, all of the schools get the 1.0 restorative justice counselor. The cost of that is split between our district BSEP funds through the counseling and behavioral health and our LCAP funds. And then the bulk of the counseling support falls in this category of academic/mental health support across each of our 3 middle schools. You can go to the next slide. And then finally, for BIA, or BIS and BTA, there's a 1.0 counselor assigned to each of those sites. And you can see a description there this is really a description of all the things that our our academic counselors are doing on a daily/weekly basis. And then one thing that I think is important to know, but just in case it comes up, I didn't put the slide on here, but we have been providing mental health and counseling supports to our elementary schools through a couple of grant funds. One is the MHSSA grant through the city of Berkeley, and then we have some learning recovery funds. We contract with community agencies to support basically the equivalent of a full-time counselor at each of our elementary sites. And I think that was the last slide. Yep.
Rebecca, did you still have a question?
Jill, in the very beginning, and I'm sorry you were going fast, but in the very beginning, you talked about how there were going to be sort of 3 positions that were open, and that was going to sort of address another piece of this. And I didn't quite understand what you meant when you were saying that. So is it that you're going to reshuffle rather than sort of shutting down those positions, and the empty positions may or may not be filled depending upon what's happening? Is that like, I'm sorry, I'm just not understanding. So
that's right. I see Sam smiling at me. Do you want to?
I can address this.
Okay.
We are going to do some reassignment, but the main thing is that we have vacancies that have occurred due to either people leaving the district on their own choice or through non-reelection or through temporal lease. And so that gave us vacancies so that we don't have to lay off any of the people that we currently have, but are able to reduce the vacancies and then redistribute the positions across the district as to what is needed.
And so my question is, and I think this is the elephant in the room, so to speak, right? I know that what we do sometimes is we look at positions that haven't been filled in a year or 6 months, and so maybe we can fold those into we don't really need them because they haven't been filled, but that doesn't sort of answer the question, right? So as I'm looking at other kinds of places where we know we need counselors, and I'm very sad to have lost the intervention counselors for the freshmen, but I'm also thinking about the waiting list for RISE, the waiting list for Bridge, other programs that are actually embedding counselor people as part of those wraparound services. You know, I'm recognizing that this feels still like I'm a little anxious about the way in which the shelves are getting moved in this way, right? Relative to understanding there are a lot of needs that students have. So how do we ensure that the fact that there have been some people who've been laid off, or some people, or not laid off rather, some people who've chosen to leave, or have other circumstances around why that position is empty, how we avoid that from happening and make sure that those job announcements are really out there and they're going through a process of being filled, as opposed to a way in which we can sort of not have those counseling positions, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Rebecca, I think that that's part of the work that's still in process. Like we had, you know, for a number of different reasons, we have the vacancies. And to your point, some of those vacancies might be identified as like, this is the base level of service, right? Like this is a position, although it's vacant, is a position that we're going to need to have somebody in because of the function that it plays. And I'm not, and that means that we might need to deprioritize other counseling services, because although we haven't been using this quote recently, we can do anything, but we can't do everything and in a finite amount of resources. Is there a different way for us to look at the supports that are being provided? Berkeley High is a good example, because I think one of the questions that they've been considering is, in some cases, students who are in some of our college and career readiness programming actually have 2 counselors, right? They have their academic counselor and then they have their college and career readiness counselor. And is that the most efficient or effective way to do that? Is there a different way that we might do that? Because they're doubling up on services, even though the function of those counselors could be considered 2 different things. But in a time where we're trying to explore what the system support is and how we might realize more efficient processes for our students, all of those things have to be considered. All by way of saying, you know, we want as much counseling support as we can provide our students for a number of different reasons. But we also want to make sure that we're doing that effectively and efficiently. And we know, you know, that counseling matters and it makes a difference for a number of our students in many different ways.
I'm going to let Vicky go, but I think there's another piece to this. But Vicky, you might have it. So I believe you might be following up. Thanks.
Yeah, I have two comments. The first one is if you go back a slide, there's an error, I think, on the slide. MLK, it says 3.4, but below there's 3.4 plus 1, so that's 4.4. I just want to confirm that. And then, so to follow up, you said that there were 3 openings that would be reduced. What are specifically those 3 openings? Like, which ones of these are unfilled?
We've done the whole reconfiguring yet. We aren't positive which, like, where things are going to fall, as far as I know. So we have not identified where those pieces are. But
if we have unfilled positions, you know what the unfilled positions are, right?
Correct, but we're not saying that those are the exact positions that we would be. We could reassign somebody to those positions if those are necessary positions.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is that we would not lay off any current employees. However, the workload of 2 counselors would be redistributed among the current counseling team.
That's one way of putting it, yes. But okay. It's a little bit different because it might not be that all the workload would fall on the counseling. It may fall on some other positions, but it's
okay.
And a little bit complex, but that is a bit basic.
Okay, and then I know she can't talk because, you know, she's not a member of the committee, but you said Ms. Bracchiamonte was here. So I'm assuming in the same way that you worked with Berkeley High with the admin reconsolidation to find that $150K, you're working with the counseling department at Berkeley High to see what the best way to reduce those is. And is there a potential to switch some of these things to like a 0.8 or something so that person can still focus on their role, but maybe, or does that go to the thing about the reduction? Because in some ways, like, we could potentially fund these in other ways, like BSEP could maybe pick up funding if we're reducing different roles. So I don't know. I guess that's my question.
Yeah, all of that are still options for us in terms of figuring stuff out, what exactly ends up happening. The one thing is that we would talk to the counselors, but we also have to work with BFT representatives because we can't negotiate with individual members. So we would also need to have BFT involved in that conversation, just like Yuba was involved in the conversation, and for all of that. So we think that if we had everything, we would agree that we need everything. And again, as Jill said, our thing is that we do need to look at what trade-offs are we able to do and how do we do it, because we can't afford everything. And so that's, I think, the piece that we need to look at. I'm butchering that quote, but that's the piece that I would say. We don't disagree that all of these positions serve an important role. But we also have to figure out how do we make it so that we are still able to move forward and be a positive. So,
and just to follow up, Vicki, Doreen is a member of staff, and so if Doreen is here to respond to your question or provide clarification, that is totally fine. I don't know if she has anything more to add or if she's wanting to speak, but Doreen, if there is something you want to add in the context of this conversation, please feel free to unmute and do so.
Only if Vicki, you said a lot, so I didn't know if there was a technical item that I could currently answer. I know I can't answer the kind of cabinet level stuff.
I guess my main question was just that I wanted to ensure that like it wasn't sort of we're just getting rid of positions that are not filled versus that you're in coordination with the district on restructuring what these different job descriptions might look like and all of that process, because I know you always come to our SSCs advocating for this stuff. So, that was my intent.
Oh, got it. Yes. So just like Jill mentioned in the first graphic for Berkeley High School, the way that I've been assisting and working with Jill and cabinet members is to essentially articulate and provide information that's accurate so that everybody can have the most informed, accurate information and make an informed decision. And so that's how I've been contributing.
Thank you, Doreen. And then with that, I got to do the plug, Vicki, that, I'm glad that you and Rebecca and others want to ensure that we're not just getting rid of positions, but I hope that you all know and trust that, we care about the babies too. We want to move towards a goal. We believe when we know the services our babies need and the resources. And so every bit of what we do, unlike other districts where I've been in, it's not just the carte blanche. We're going to say this and then go with it. We try our best and make a lot of effort to do it in collaboration with those who are closest to the work and doing the work. That can be our labor partners, labor leadership. That can be Doreen. That could be the high school and specific. So just know that collaboration and coordination is what we do, because we do believe that we cannot make these decisions on our own. And they are hard decisions, y'all. And I know that folks are like, we should expand this and do this, which is always weird when you're making such significant reductions to talk about expansion. And so we are going to have to really challenge ourselves. And though it's a big exhale to figure out how can we still stay the course, but know that we probably are not able to expand right now, or we're probably not able to add right now. To me, the good news of this particular presentation, though I understand the concerns about the elimination of vacancies, is that for the current, we can keep the people who wanted jobs, who needed jobs here to serve our babies. And then we have some time to figure out those vacancies. Do we reopen? Do we refigure out the resource allocation, et cetera? So I just want to say that this is not the end, right? And hopefully one day, as SBAC, we'll have a chance to be in community and conversation outside of budget reduction, so we really can think through these things and figure out how we can do things more and better for our babies, but also do them in ways that are efficient. I will also argue that the research says, and my experience says, and probably yours too, that more people does not always address or solve problems. And so we want to kind of get out of that mindset too, and really truly think about impact and effectiveness while thinking about efficiencies, because we are doing this work on dollars that are finite and specific. So that's my heartfelt response to you and Rebecca. Like, please know we are committed to doing right by our babies, and nobody wants to be in this conversation right now, myself included. And so if we can figure out how to take care of our people, make sure they have positions, et cetera, and then use the space outside of this to get creative about how might we going forward, I'm keeping you to that. And hopefully we can have those conversations in a little bit less stressful and time sensitive situations. So with that, counselors, we're moving on to the other big one that folks had lots of questions about, which is the college readiness programs. I know you do, Rebecca. We just don't have the time. Rebecca put in the chat. This is me and Rebecca. She thinks there are ways to expand, and I don't disagree. But again, because of all the time constraints, I don't know that we can do that right in this moment, right? And so I think what we need to do better as an organization and as collaborative partners is to have these ongoing conversations around impact, effectiveness, expansion, et cetera, and not wait until our dollars are getting reduced as significantly as they are 2 years in a row. But I do agree with you. There are ways, and want to make sure we make space to figure out those ways after we get to all the deadline, after we meet all of our deadlines and the obligations.
Just one quick note, because Rebecca did put that in the chat. I think it's important to know that the staffing structure for each of these programs is different. And just because there's counseling support or not does not necessarily mean more or less students are going to get served. And that's just going to be dependent on the program. So I just want to put a little pin in that one.
We got lots of pins, Rebecca. We got lots of pins, y'all. Hopefully one day really we have these real thoughtful conversations. We're moving on to college readiness. Not to say these are not thoughtful conversations. They're just hurried.
We will have a thoughtful conversation on May 29th.
What's May 20th? Okay, don't distract me. Okay, so next slide, please. So college readiness. This is when we were looking at programs like Bridge and Rise and College Bound and Puente and Avid. So coming back to you all, because there were lots of questions and there will likely be more questions after this, but this is the tip of the iceberg. There's been a lot of work to collect data on the various programs, and the programs themselves have a lot of data that they have collected. Next slide, please. Just a couple things I'm wanting to ground us in is that the majority of these programs are programs that serve our secondary students, with a larger majority being those that serve our students who are actually at the high school level. I also want to just say and name that for me, this is always challenging, that when we get to having to talk about budget reductions in particular, we oftentimes end up talking about these programs. Last year, we did the same thing. And I would say that's the same experience that I've had in other districts, in part because these are the programs that are funded all or some by general funds, right? We know that there's tons of other programs that are in Berkeley Unified, but they're funded by different sources. And the purview of this committee is the unrestricted general fund. And so I want to name, as a person committed to equity, as a person who would have been a part of these focal groups if I were a student in school, it wasn't that long ago, but would have been a part of these focal groups, that we are very clear that we are having these conversations, not because we don't understand the value, the importance and the impact of these programs, but because this is a set of programs that is under our purview, under the budget, that we need to make significant reductions in. I also want to say that as we move into this conversation about these programs and look at numbers, I want us to hesitate, or just don't even do it, to think about, well, that's a small number and that's a big number. At the end of the day, the people and the babies that these programs serve are babies who oftentimes do not feel seen, heard, and valued in other spaces in BUSD. These are babies who otherwise have either tried or don't feel that they can be a part of other programs and supports and communities in BUSD. So there is something special to be said about equity, and something special to be said about, I don't care if they only serve 15 kids. If those are 15 babies that are now seen, heard, and touched because of that program, I need us to hold that in our heads and not compare that to the program that's not on the list that serves 100 kids. So just wanted to say that, because I think sometimes in these conversations, we get all nitty gritty and we forget that these programs are necessary, because there's still a lot of work for us to do as a system to make sure that these babies feel seen, welcome, valued, and heard, and actually can move towards the brilliance that we know is theirs inherently. Next slide, please. So the first question you all asked was just about participation. And this is our participation data, our enrollment data, if you will, from who and how we have these students tagged in EduClimber. And so you see here that Avid, for example, serves 106 students total, going across grades 6 through 12. Bridge, as you know, focuses on our high school students 9 through 12, and they are serving about 148. College Bound similarly serves our high school students 57. Puente serves students, from in 7th and 8th grade, and then 10th through 12th grade at 120. And then Rise also similarly only serves our high school students. The latest number that we have is 131. So wanted to show you this because that was the first question, is how many students are being served in this program. One question that we don't have the answer to for this presentation, but I know it has been a question, is how many of these students are actually in multiple programs? That data has been run. I just didn't pull it over, but I will definitely get that to you, because that was an ask. Next slide, please. The other information that you all asked was around our unduplicated students, and I'm going to let you see this, but I want to get to the next two slides because it tells you a little bit more of the story about who these students are. Next slide. And so here, this one shows the number of students in these programs by these different programmatic distinctions. And so MKV is McKinley-Vento. Those are students who are in transitional housing or identify as unhoused. We have SWB, that's students with disabilities. EL are our English learners. SED, a lot of these terms, we should all return them, but SED is socioeconomically disadvantaged. So the income bracket of their families is lower than average. VS is a vision scholar. And so vision scholars are students who are in our CSACE program who've been identified as being disproportionately represented for special education. Then there's FRLP, our free and reduced price lunch students, and then also our foster students. These are focal students as defined by a number of different entities, but these are definitely focal students as defined by BUSD, because when you look at these students' data, academic outcome, traditional data, compared to the district overall, these are often students that are on that other side of that opportunity and achievement and access gap that we're trying to do different and better by. And so I wanted to share this data with you because this was also requested by you all. And you have the deck, so you can kind of drill down and circle and highlight and do all those things. I wanted to let you know we're coming back with the data. In total, it looks like there's 2,000 of our babies who are served across all of these programs. And again, I know that there's that question around how many of them are in more than one, and we will get that information to you by the next meeting. Next slide, please. So those are programmatic descriptors, and then these are this is a breakdown, by race and ethnicity. Again, you can see that we've broken it down by students who identify as Black or African American, Latinx, those are 2 or more races. Those students who identify as white, Asian, Pacific Islander, Filipino, and American Indian. And so again, you can see that these programs, all of these programs, serve a very diverse group of students, and all of these programs serve high number of students that we identify as focal students here in BUSD. Next slide, please. And so what we want to do in the next couple of slides is to share with you some information about each of the programs, specifically as they relate to our progress towards our target. You're going to notice and hopefully learn that some of these programs are not even funded by general fund. And so though it's nice for us to provide information and definitely one of those future conversations under less stressful times around the efficiencies, the impact, et cetera, and how might we should be had around all of these programs, but we're going to really try to focus on how making any kind of changes helps us advance towards that $7.6 million target. So the first group that we're going to talk about, and Jill's going to help me with this, is AVID. I'm going to let Jill present on AVID. And then what you will see if you see the actual slide deck is that there's a orange bar that is not visible here that provides a little bit of extra data around these particular programs. Specifically, they're providing data around if these programs, students in these programs have a difference of, in terms of ADA or attendance. It also provides information about the GPAs and or their likelihood to get Ds and Fs, as well as where available or appropriate, how they are scoring on their report cards. I do want to remind the committee that high school is kind of the last and the next frontier for us in terms of having a consistent and aligned assessments over years. And so outside of the SBAC currently, which is our end of the year assessment, there is not many references to be able to track progress throughout the year over multiple years for students in these groups. We will be able to do that, say, next year. So if you're looking for that, how are they doing on their interim assessments, for example, we don't have that data as cleanly as we would like to engage in this conversation. So with that, Jill, you want to start with AVID? I'm sorry, Ms. Mildred, you had your hand up. I apologize.
Yes, ma'am. You said something about, and I just wanted you to repeat it if you can. If there are 15 students seen or heard, and I didn't get the last part of that, of what you said.
Oh, I don't know, Ms. Mildred. That was a while ago.
Okay.
Just there, I think just for us to hold that if there are, we might be like, if that's a small number, we want to see more kids. If that program isn't serving more kids, is it valuable? And I'm saying it's valuable for those 15 babies.
That's right.
And it's needed for those 15 babies because somewhere, somehow, we have not done a good enough job by making sure other programs or BUSD as a whole makes those babies feel seen and welcome or heard. So that's why I want us to kind of rethink how we define value and who we're asking is it valuable for. So that was it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Jojo, I'm sorry, Ms. Hogan-Dyke.
All right. So wanted to provide some clarification too for AVID, because I think on the summary slides that SBAC has been looking at, there's been a response to the grand total of $444,000. So we want to make it clear that there are actually 2 tracks, for lack of a better term, for our AVID programming. We have an AVID elective class, and those are entirely funded at the site level, mostly through the site level BSEP funds. You can see that on the right-hand side. That comprises the majority of our AVID sections. On the left-hand side, what you see are the FTE and the materials and supplies, et cetera, that we fund through the LCAP and our LCFF supplemental dollars. That includes a 0.4 of an AVID coordinator and sections for what we call AVID Excel. These are our classes to support our multilingual language learners in the middle school. So that's why we utilize our LCAP funds to provide targeted instruction in English language development for our multilingual language learners. We also pay for an AVID contract. When you run an AVID program, you have an AVID contract. There are also requirements for new staff coming in to teach AVID classes that they complete their professional development and training. So that's included in the parts that we pay for out of the LCAP, in addition to some additional hours for each of the AVID teachers to provide support, to contact parents, et cetera, outside of the AVID class. So while there wasn't a lot of savings, I do want to appreciate Director Dr. Jessica Bonduras, who's been in conversations with AVID about reducing that annual contract, which, while only $6,000 will help alleviate some of the reductions that we need to make in LCAP, because like the general fund budget, our LCAP actions, the cost of those actions have been increasing, but we have not seen a similar increase in the LCFF dollars that we're receiving from the states. We're also trying to resolve that for a bit.
Mildred and then Vicki. Ms. Mildred?
Oh, was my name? I'm sorry. That was from earlier. I apologize.
No worries. Vicki?
Quick question. So the site funded, it says it's site funded by BSEP, but if these are for teachers teaching elective classes, wouldn't this be covered by the teacher template?
Not necessarily. For the most part, and Sam, I'm looking at you to see if you have a faster answer. I know for sure, as an example, the Berkeley High one is an after-school program, and it's been coming out of BSEP.
Yeah.
And so I think there's been a mix, but it's mostly been out of their BSEP funds.
So at the elementary level, we have what's called release time, which is covered in the teacher template. And then at the secondary level, both middle school and high school, we have what's called ECHO, which is the what Jill is alluding to in terms of like an after school thing. It's generally 0 or 7th period that it does come from BSEP. But they also may have electives or other things that are in the teacher template as well. So it depends.
And then Steve, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, sorry, I know I missed part of this conversation. So that slide says potential reductions is $6,000.
And that's just to lower the contract, Steve. And again, that won't impact our progress towards the target because it's a different funding source.
Right, yeah. No, it just seemed like such a small number to even mention.
Pauline said that every dollar
counts.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I think that across these, our college readiness programs and affinity-based programs, this is where there are intersections between our general fund, our LCFF funds, and other grant funds, but there are interdependencies, there's rules and regulations across some of them, but we were asked to address a potential target, and so we wanted to provide that background for you.
So we're going to move on to college bound. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Bridge, because that is a program that we all love that is also partially funded by general fund. And so it does have some implications for our progress towards our target. Jill?
Yeah. So on the next slide, you can see the breakdown of how the Bridge program is currently funded. The majority of that is coming out of our LCAP funds, which funds 0.8 of the coordinator for the Bridge program, and alongside of 4 teachers who receive, who are a 0.4 FTE. So what that means in that gray box below is that each teacher who's assigned, teacher or counselor, because some of them are counselors, who are assigned a Bridge cohort. Bridge, as you know, is a cohorted program, cohorted by grades. Each teacher has a 0.2 for the delivery of program. That's the class or that takes place after school. But they also have a 0.2 for what we call case management. So again, contacting parents, coordinating with other teachers, following up with counselors, etc. Out of the general fund, we pay for a 0.6 of a counselor and a 0.4 for an additional 5th cohort. These two positions were added I think before Iniki and I got here, so 4 years ago, because this cohort is now seniors. That 5th cohort has matriculated across the grade level. They are now seniors this year. And then the coordinator, Ms. Jessie Luxford, has diligently submitted a City of Berkeley grant on a regular basis, which pays for very small part of her coordinator position alongside funds for materials, supplies, snacks, field trips, and tutors. So the target we had set here was to reduce by a 1.0 FTE. Want to recognize that we've got a 5th cohort of graduating seniors. And so while that cohort is graduating, we do realize there's a wait list, but we are anticipating that we will be able to cover that those 4 cohorts across each of the grades as we move into the next school year.
Nicole, and then Rebecca.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. So this great. So thank you guys for putting this information together. Really appreciate it. Going back to what you were saying previously, Superintendent, this time is really difficult, but I think it's also gives us an opportunity to figure out, to lean into and figure out what programs are working, which ones are working less well, and then make those hard decisions. And we've kind of been talking about a lot of this for 2 or 3 years, even before maybe getting on board. But so in the one thing, so this is great to see the head count and the dollars and the proposals of the cuts for each one. What I'm really thinking about is, instead of giving, every program a haircut, it's trying to figure out, should we lean into some programs and lean back from others, to be honest. I think that, some of the additional data that would be helpful is to look at some of the success metrics. And I know specifically, RISE and Bridge both have to do that because of the City of Berkeley grants they have. So they have a lot of data, which is great. And we looked at last year. And I think that I'd love to take a strong look at that again. I think we also should look at, the wait lists, because that's our students and our families voting with their own feet about where they want to be. And, a lot of programs are, we try to communicate our program availability to all of our families. And to be honest, RISE and Bridge are not communicated very strongly because they're over enrolled and we don't have space for them. But if we open, and we already have wait lists. So, the fact is that people want to be in those programs and they can't. Whereas we know last year we have several programs that are under enrolled. And then a third piece is what Rebecca mentioned in the past, is that I'd be really curious on the attendance rates of the students in these programs, because those 2 programs in particular, and also Avid and Puente, also have this kind of regularity to students being on campus. So that means both, one, I recall about 2 years ago, Miss Beatrice told me that the research showed that attendance on campus is one of the strongest determinants for student success. So I could be wrong there. I'm not an educator, but I remember that conversation well. And then second being that obviously it's about funding that helps pay for everything. So I'd love to see attendance rates for each one of these programs split by demographic of those that are served in the programs.
Thank you, Nicole. So really quickly, I think we are all trying to do the same thing. We're definitely presenting this information, and we're not trying to do a haircut to everybody equally, or we are trying to figure out where to lean in and lean back. In terms of the data, we did add on these slides, that was a little orange box I was talking about, some information, and one of those is the average daily attendance rate for students who are in these programs. It is not broken down by race, ethnicity, or EL, et cetera, but you are going to look at these and find that if we look at these programs, it's actually pretty close. What you'll also see in terms of the students' average attendance, none of them are necessarily significantly different from students who are not in these programs, but they all have, pretty decent attendance, if you will. So the babies who are in these programs are coming to school. What you'll also see in those little orange boxes is the probability of getting D's and F's compared to students who are not in these programs. And you will see, again, some consistency around these programs. The babies who are in these programs are actually have a lower probability of getting D's and F's, perhaps because of the wraparound and the additional support, like the public commenter mentioned earlier, that they are providing. You are right that both Bridge and RISE, because they are recipients of city grants, have additional measures they have to report on, and we do have that data, whereas some of our other programs are not required to, but that does not mean that data isn't available. So we will definitely follow up and bring you all the data. But I do want to again stress that one of the nuances about high school that's different than what we can do even in elementary right now is that we have not necessarily had consistent and aligned assessments that we can do comparative measures year over year. And so we're going to bring that data to you, but also want to be clear that they may not all be using the same metric or tool to measure. But I think what you will see, we probably won't see it tonight because we won't get there, is that we are trying to, when you say lean back, we are trying to reconcile. So for example, if we were to go to the college bound slide, which is the next slide, one of our recommendations, because again, that program has the data that says that the babies who are in it are going to college, do have strong attendance, et cetera. But to your point, there is not a wait list at this time for that program. And it has not been a wait list for the last 2 years that I'm aware of the program, though there has been an increase in enrollment. So what we would want to recommend, our recommendation is not the hairline, everybody gets the same thing, but is this a place we can lean back, if you will, and reconcile to make sure that the actual contract itself, the partnership itself, and the amount of that partnership is consistent with what the average enrollment or attendance has been over the past couple of years, which is not necessarily how those contracts were created to begin with. So there's a little bit of example of us doing what you just said, of figuring out where we might lean back. When we do all of this, you all, and when we get a better understanding of our state funding, of course, many of these programs we want to be able to expand. But at this point, again, we're just trying to move towards the target. So I wanted to call out that orange box at the bottom, circle back with the data, but also let you know that College Bound would have been or will be an example of where we are trying to say how many students are served, your idea of voting with their feet, the wait list, looking at that, and then seeing how we can reconcile that in terms of the amount of the contract itself. In this case, I'm talking about a contract because College Bound is a partnership that we have via contract and a part of the African American Success Framework. I'm going to go back though, because I know Rebecca had a question about Bridge and the impact of that reduction.
I've said enough. I'm going to go ahead and give it to Dan. Thank you.
And Jay, we do have the graduation rates and the A through 3 requirements. And so I actually appreciate that recommendation to come back with that data for you all, because that is something that's consistent and can be looked at across time.
I will say some of that information is available for both the Bridge and the RISE programs, because Bridge and AVID are partially funded by LCAP. They came into the PAC meeting to make a presentation. So the slides that they presented at PAC have been linked in the slide deck for you, and it has some of that information.
Thank you for that reminder, Jill. I forgot to point that out. So we did include some data on these programs where we had it in a nice visual and accessible format, and continue to collect more. Dan?
So I don't know what this represents, but I interviewed 17 first-gen graduating all of color students last week. And of the 17, 15 were in Bridge. And those 15 said, but for Bridge, they wouldn't be where they are. I don't know what that denominator is. Mm-hmm. So I just have a numerator, and my numerator is 15 people who seem to be doing well, who swore by the program.
Yes.
Again, I don't know, what that means. I don't know about the other programs. One person swore by RISE. One person said they were in Puente, and that's my universe. But it was a very impressive showing. And the fact that they said that, but for this, they wouldn't have made it to being people going into a four-year college, I thought that was super impressive. So
Yes.
I throw that out. You do with it as you wish. The one thing I'm missing is I don't understand what the impact to the program would be by losing the 0.6 and the 0.4.
And that is Rebecca's question as well. So I'll let Jill speak to that, and then I will say something back to you, Dan.
Well, that's the part that we've been working on. I think that, again, to the pieces of the earlier conversation, folks who are involved in the program really feel that all of the components of the program are important to ensuring student success. What we do know is that this is the 15th year of Bridge, you all. Did you know that? So celebrations for Bridge. But what we also know is that we've added additional capacity that started again around 2020. Bridge functioned with a 0.5 FTE coordinator plus the sum from the COB. I might be getting that fraction a little bit incorrect. The FTE to support each of those cohorts used to be 0.3, and there wasn't counseling support. So obviously all of the additional adult FTE to provide support, case management, talking to parents, finding students, making sure that they get to the program, supporting them in their college applications. The more adult capacity we have on that, the greater the outcomes we can have for our students. So, we're working to see what might be possible in making that reduction.
Next slide. So college bound was the next slide. I just spoke to this one. And
I still had a question about Bridge. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, can you go back to the slide? One more. So I just wanted to confirm the 0.6. So it's the potential reduction is 1 FTE. The 0.4 is for that 5th cohort. So it would just be 1 cohort per grade. But the 0.6 would actually affect all 4 groups in the entire program. And so I'm just wondering for clarification. And also that's considered a counselor, which we talked about earlier, counselors. And I believe this was listed on the counselor list. So are we kind of like double dipping here? Because we're saying that it's a cut potentially here, but then also under the counselors. And so I'm just wondering about that. And I guess I would just encourage us not to cut that counseling. I mean, obviously I don't want to cut any of it, but I think there's a difference between cutting that position versus just not having that extra cohort. And I think the success of the program counts for the people who are doing that. So I just wanted to clarify that and ask about the double counselor.
So it's 5:33. I'm going to ask that my team note that question.
Okay.
And also note that feedback that if we were to bring this back to you all, which we have not yet, this is just clarification and et cetera, that you might say you would choose to vote no in terms of advancing this particular proposal as is, and you would recommend that we not do the 0.6 counselor, but maybe just do the 0.4 for that additional cohort, or maybe you would vote no to it altogether. So duly noted. I want to move us along just because of time. I also, Dan, you brought up graduation rates and A through G rate. Again, I want to let you all know that there are links on all these slides that for some of them provide that detailed information, and we'll come back with that as well. But also, again, y'all gonna see me struggle with this whole section, and that is because, Dan, for every single one of these programs, I can get you 17 plus babies and families who say, but for X, but for Bridge, but for Rise, but for College Bound. So again, the challenge in this, y'all, is that these programs are the but for a whole bunch of babies. The numbers vary, right, for lots of reasons, but I have yet to meet a baby in any of these programs that don't say the but for. So that's going to be our work is to hold that and know how important it is to these students to hold the goals and the metrics that these programs are moving towards. And pretty much all of them are moving towards the goals and metrics. You'll see that in the attached artifact, as well as in the information we'll bring you later. And we are going to have to figure out or have a conversation of how do we move towards our target with all those things being true. But let me give you this last couple of pieces of information. Again, you're not making any recommendations tonight. So we want to make sure you just are oriented to what's in the deck. And then it looks like you all have homework. So again, college bound, the thinking was to reconcile that. We're on slide 48, Ms. Vivian. Reconcile that to keep the program because there are babies that say, but for college bound and their families as well. But to, again, true it up a little bit better so that it actually matches or more closely matches the number of students who have been served over the last several years the program has been in BUSD. So that's the recommendation for there. We would have to speak with, just like the counselors and everything else, these are conversations in collaboration with our partners. And so the exact number we will be able to come back to you with, but wanted to know that's what we've been working on. The next slide is Puente. Jill, I didn't know if you wanted to, maybe I'll just let y'all know that Puente is here. Again, Puente is not. Can we please turn off the mics, please, friends?
Regina.
My body moves to every beat. So the Puente is here as well, but want to point out there's no general funds to support Puente. If there are any reductions, we haven't brought any forth, but this again was a part of that college readiness group, and so we wanted to bring that to you. RISE is the next one. RISE, you heard some folks here at this meeting and previous meetings speak to RISE. And again, Dan, RISE is one of those ones, but for RISE, I wouldn't be where I am. And so I want to give, I just want to respect and value all of these programs for the things that they do for students and families. So RISE is general fund, $216,000 is the contribution. That's a newer contribution. The RISE has been around for a very long time and has been an integral part of the work to support our babies at Berkeley High School and to support their families. And it was not until last year that BUSD began contributing to RISE, even though RISE has faithfully served BUSD students for all the years that they've been here and actually housed on Berkeley High School campus. So with advocacy and partnership, we agreed to fund to contribute to the total of RISE by $216,000. RISE also has a grant from the city of Berkeley. We were not clear on that total, the recent amount. So we will follow up with Ms. Betty. Ms. Betty, don't say anything if you are here. We will follow up to get you that exact number, but just know there's two sources of funding for this particular program. Again, for this one, we haven't had a chance to really engage Ms. Betty thoughtfully, but we do want to see where, if anywhere, there is some wiggle room and some potential cost savings. I guess I should also say that for the bridge conversation, again, we came with our recommendation trying to get to a number and have been in and are open to continued conversations with Ms. Jessie to figure out if that's not where to make the change or the reduction, where else might there be some wiggle room to contribute towards our progress towards the target. Regina?
How many more slides do you have? I just want to be mindful. Did you present them all or you have a few more to go?
I'm just telling you guys what we got. We're about to be wrapping up.
Okay. Yeah. So can you go to the college bound slide then?
Yes. Go to college bound slide.
Yeah, I was just waiting for you to present and then ask my questions, but you did. I just want to be mindful. People were asking questions after every slide. That took up time. So we've been in this conference. I believe this contract's been going with college bound since 2021. Or 2020, or there was like a derail or an extension or something. And I would like to hear from the district about the plan, because I thought we originally discussed about transitioning out so that the services were done in-house, and seeing that the contract's going to be renewed, even though if it's smaller, I really want to see this plan rather than an extension, because it's been like 4 years now. So I'm just curious if you could speak to that.
So I can try to. I don't know that I recall that I ever said that we were going to end our partnership with College Bound for all the reasons I said before. They are serving a cohort of babies and families who really find it beneficial and find it to be a space that they cannot find elsewhere in BUSD. However, what we did do last year is we did significantly reduce the contract, given a number of factors, right? We were looking at the attendance and we were looking at the enrollment, and we're looking at the attendance and participation. And we do know that there were some students who were, again, in multiple programs. So there was a reduction last year. And we are going back to reduce it again, or to have a conversation about reducing it again this year, eliminating the partnership in its entirety. Regina, if I made you think that was the goal, then I apologize. That has not been our goal. Our goal really has been to try to figure out how we can still provide this particular service and resource to our students and families, but true it up in a way that we are not, encumbering dollars for a greater number of students and those who actually participate. College Bound doesn't come and make public comments here, and they're not here. But again, I would say, just like Rise and Bridge, programs that I deeply respect and value, you would hear families and students saying, but for College Bound. So I did not have a plan to eliminate it completely. I had the plan to figure out how we can provide that service to those families, with more restrictive resources. The families in College Bound know about Bridge, know about Rise. Some of them, again, are multiple, and some of them choose College Bound solely. The programs, though, we did show that they serve very similar demographics, and they all are serving babies who otherwise may not feel welcome in BUSD. There are slight nuances to the ways in which they provide that service. And for College Bound, one of those nuances is there is a active parent component where the caregivers, are required to come to the particular workshops. And so that group of families really values that particular level of participation. So I was not canceling it. And I'm saying because I don't know if I'm the one who you got that information from. It's a conversation we could have.
Yeah, not so much canceling. It's just contracts, like they have an agreement and there's an end date. That's what I was referring to.
Yes,
so, okay,
yes.
Thank you.
I know there's probably some more questions. I just want to orient you all to what else is here, because we do have a board meeting in 5 minutes. The other thing we wanted to come back to you all, if you go to 51, Miss Vivian, is focal population was another area that we were looking to do some balancing. If you go to slide 52, Young, Gifted, and Black fell under that. The Young, Gifted, and Black program the contract was one of those ones that was reduced last year rather significantly. And so the contract this year is $41,000. They are now housed in a Berkeley Unified School, which was one of the areas of concern from families, is that it was hard to access, and that's why attendance was perhaps lower. The attendance currently, they're located at BAM, is 17 BUSD students. There are some non-BUSD students who participate in the program who now pay a fee, which was not the case previously. So that was all a part of the conversations. We started conversations with Young, Gifted, and Black, and 41,000 is kind of their bare bones right now in terms of the capacity to run the program. We are in conversations trying to see how and where we could get that number reduced. We were thinking about 10,000, but we also might have to have a conversation about what is doable for them and if they can provide any type of quality of program to our students for that reduced contract. So we are, again, in conversations to reduce that particular contract. Next slide, please. The other one that's here under...
It actually has to move forward a couple of slides. I was trying to get...
We're on 52 right now, Miss Vivian, and I'm about to go to 53.
Right. No, one more. Two more, Miss Vivian. That's Young, Gifted, and Black. Okay, and now one more.
So the other contract the other contract that we've been working on, the other partnership, is with RT Fisher, that does a significant amount of work with regard to the African American Success Framework. 208,000 of the contract comes from general fund, which is again why it's under our purview as the SBAC, and then 100,000 comes from or has come from COVID recovery funds. For a number of students, this one doesn't say that because the African American Success Framework and the partnerships with an S at the end that we have with RT Fisher are multiple. There are some examples of them providing direct service. For example, there's a SBAC intervention program that ran last year at Sylvia Mendez, is running again, direct work and support with students. There have been after school and summer programs, direct support and work with students. At the same time, there is work that is indirectly impacting our students, inclusive of professional development, coaching, and POCs, and intervention work. And so because of that, that student section does say direct and indirect. You have a summary here of what RT Fisher provides, and you have the links to the African American Success Framework website, as well as the Year 2 implementation report that was done in November of 2024. Here, we've been in conversations, again, to reduce this particular line item by 40 to 50,000, really figuring out how we can maintain critical and impactful components of the partnership, the PD and the intervention, but also start to strategically move things off to district personnel, which was always the plan for this particular partnership. And you'll see that on slide 54. We are going to have to end our next meeting. We will start back with contractors. Contractors come up a lot, so we had a whole set of information to share with you about a particular contract that we have with an organization called Alivo. That's come up a lot. And we were also going to give you a March 15th update. I'm actually going to ask Ms. Vivian to skip to slide 61 for me, please, as we prepare to close. and I apologize, not trying to be rude, but we do have a 5:45 special board meeting. I put in the chat the other things you want to know, and we will follow up with that. But I did want to call out, we're on slide 61, Ms. Vivian. I did want to call out and give you an update tonight. Again, staff is presenting a budget balancing update to our board. That meeting starts at 7 p.m. And we will also be sharing with our board updates on our March 15th notices. Ms. Vivian, we're on slide 62, please.
62.
Yes, ma'am.
That's it.
Oh, it's not. Okay, maybe yours is different. So I go back one. My numbers are different, probably. I'm sorry. Oh, yours are different. Yeah, I don't know. I would just give you all the updates. So we came to you all some time back and told you that we had noticed 182 classified personnel and 191 certificated personnel. We are providing an update to the board, but wanted to update you that the number of recensions has been rather significant over the last couple weeks. We have 147 out of the 182 classified notices rescinded as of this evening. Some of those are still not rescinded because we're waiting again for confirmation from those soft dollars sources that we talked about the last meeting. And then of our 22 certificated notices that could be rescinded, 19 of those are rescinded. Recall that the majority of the certificated notices were about reassignment. They were not about layoffs. So I wanted to shout out that and celebrate my team for being able to make a lot of moves, if you will, in a short amount of time, and get excited about the fact that we were able to do what we say in our strategies for budget balancing, which is to, as much as possible, not touch people and programs. And so these recensions in some ways are a testament to that. The last thing I will share, just stop, Ms. Vivian, it's fine. The last thing I'll share is that our next meeting is on May 14th. It'll be May 14th at 4 p.m. We actually might need to extend that meeting to make it from 4 to 6 if folks are available, because we still have some more items here to clarify from this meeting. Our plan for that next meeting is to continue the areas of clarification, but to also start to bring back those proposals and ask you all to make your suggestions or recommendations so that we can start to figure out what we're going to advance and what I will be considering as we work on the balanced budget that we want to present to our Board of Education. I apologize for the abrupt ending that we're about to have. I appreciate you all. It's 5:47. You are happy and welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay on. I have to go open a special session for the board. And if you all are so inclined, I hope that you join us at the board meeting this evening to get these updates and to hear how we tell the story of the work that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good luck tonight.